Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first installment of the Insight series. This is a quarterly webinar hosted by inploi, and we'll be looking into the trends of the talent acquisition and HR technology landscape in general. My name is Nico. I'm a product manager here at inploi. I help everyone here build cool software and implement it. Some of you might know me already. And a little bit of housekeeping before we get going with this. The webinar is being recorded. It will be sent around. And it will have a summary. So there's no need to take notes. Just listen, participate, ask questions, and don't worry about that. And like I said, there will be a big Q&A section at the end. So if you have a question, there's a Q&A little thing at the bottom of your Zoom. Only Alex and I can see those questions. So feel free to ask anything you want in there. And we will do our best to get them answered in the Q&A section at the end. If we can't answer a question for whatever reason, we will follow up with it afterwards. So that's it for me. So without further ado, let's get going with this. Introducing our speaker today, Alex Hanson-Smith. He's our Chief Product and Technology Officer and one of the co-founders here at inploi. Take it away.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Nico, and good morning, everyone. If you are having technical issues, I think everyone seems to be okay, but I know sometimes these things can be tricky. So if you are, just drop a message in the chat and we'll see if we can resolve it. But hopefully everything is working as expected. So yeah, very nice to be talking to you all today. And thanks very much for joining us. As Nico said, my name is Alex. I'm the co-founder and Chief Technology and Product Officer here at inploi. What is inploi? inploi is a candidate experience platform. We're a software company based in London. We are all committed to one vision, which is that we believe that we can build a better future for hiring. We are a bunch of designers, hackers, engineers, with that common shared belief. And I want to say at this point, I'm super lucky to work with people like Nico and the rest of the team, some who you might be able to see through the window behind me, because everyone is easygoing, super smart, and curious to build great technology. So at inploi, we believe that the future of hiring is personal. Now, we're incredibly excited about huge technological trends like artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation. They're incredibly exciting. And this webinar wouldn't be very interesting if we didn't find those things exciting. But we believe that the role of the human being in the hiring equation is more important now than it has ever been. That ability to create an emotional contract, the ability to create genuine, authentic human connection is becoming a rare commodity. And I think that is what we want to do, is use technology to empower humans to be better at the human bit of hiring. And we've been on this mission for a number of years now, and it's incredibly exciting to be working with some of our clients towards that end. So a little bit more about me. My name is Alex, and as I said, I'm the co-founder and CTO at inploi. I set inploi up 8 years ago with my co-founder Matt, and the reason that we did that was because we'd had similarly awful experiences looking for work. We were shocked at how poor that consumer or candidate experience was as you were moving through the job search process. And in an age of kind of, at that time, Airbnb and Uber was everything, and it was all about marketplaces and great mobile application experiences. And the job search was just fundamentally flawed and broken. So we assumed someone else was going to solve this, but it turned out no one was. And what's more, it was a global phenomenon. So this was a problem that was happening across all types of roles, across all geographies. And we decided that this was a problem that we were going to solve. So that was 8 years ago. And I think cutting through the next 8 years, we've kind of been on that mission to build and execute technology for some of our clients. So I also have done other things in the time that I was building inploi and obviously writing a lot of code and doing lots of other things. But I also had a daughter with my wife Letty, and that's Nell on the screen there. She came as a ghost to our Halloween office party. And the reason I'm putting Nell on the screen is that any parents watching will know that children are kind of like little petri dishes, and you send them out into the world and they come back with all sorts of nasty little viruses. And right now I've got quite a serious cold. So if I sound a little bit bunged up and I'm doing some sneezing, please do apologize. I should also say that Nico is in the same room as me, and he's been very brave coming in here for an hour. So thank you, Nico, and I guess thank you, Nell, as well. So what have I learned over the last 8 years? I think I want to start by saying that there is one learning that cuts through all of the others, and that is that customers have to be at the center of everything. And it's incredibly easy to be distracted by ideas that are thrown at you by people who won't actually end up paying for or using or finding value in your product. And instead, you build things that people just don't need or want. And what we have done is we've put customers right at the middle of everything that we do. And if you are a customer, and I know there are a few of you listening today, I hope that you would agree with that sentiment. And if you are a prospect or you are not a customer at the moment, please go and speak to our customers to validate that claim, because every decision we make goes through a real customer panel. And we will always ask ourselves, is this going to make X person's weekend better because they don't have to worry about compiling reports on a Monday? Is this going to help Y person compile their end of year finances so that they can go to the CFO with clear documentation? Is this going to help the candidate move through the experience in a more efficient way? Everything is around the customer and ultimately the end user. So a little bit of an agenda before we get started with the presentation. I'm going to talk about 3 core things today. The first is going to be candidate experience. So we'll start with some understanding of what is candidate experience, why does it matter, and then also kind of the current state. So what's going on with candidate experience at the moment. We'll then move into a section around artificial intelligence. So we'll look at AI as a short history. So what is AI? How does it work? And where does it come from? And then I'll endeavor to explain AI very simply. So I'm going to give you the simplest possible explanation of AI, because something that I feel is really important. We often question increasingly now the food we put in our mouths, but we don't question how the technology we use is built. And I think it's really important that people understand at least the fundamentals of that technology. We'll also look at using AI a little bit as well. So candidate experience, AI, and then we're going to talk about those 2 things combined. So how do we combine candidate experience and AI, and what are the considerations there, particularly around ethics, current solutions that are in the market, but also future solutions. We'll then end up with a little bit of a recap and talk to you about how you can keep up. And there will be plenty of time for questions at the end. Nico, I know, is fielding questions. So Nico, just make sure you write those down, and we'll have some questions at the end. So candidate experience, what is it? I'm sure that most people on this webinar will know broadly what candidate experience is, but I think it's important to start by saying that whenever I say what I do, so whenever I'm like at a drinks thing with my wife and someone says, what do you do? And I say, well, it's a candidate experience platform. I can see my wife rolling her eyes because she just says, candidate is not a word that most people use. And I realized that is true. You know, we all say candidate all the time because it's part of the vernacular, it's part of the language. But actually, candidates are just people looking for jobs, right? So I think it's important to say that whenever we talk about candidate experience, it's just like the people going through that job search experience as they come into your business. So candidate are people, simple as that. And you could probably summarize candidate experience as how a job applicant perceives your employer brand throughout the recruitment or hiring process. So it's when they're moving through that experience, how are they perceiving you? How are they perceiving your EVP? How are they perceiving your brand? And really that is in its essence what candidate experience is. And crucially, candidate experience is not linear. And I'm going to show you loads of linear graphs today, but actually that's simply for the sake of the presentation. Really, candidate experience, as we all know, is not linear. Candidates jump around the internet, they go to multiple places, they go through multiple touch points before they even become a prospect. So candidate experience is not linear, and they will be jumping around, and you cannot really control the full end of that experience. But we're going to talk to you about the things that you can control and how you can impact that candidate experience. But it's also really challenging out there. And these two kind of silly images were generated last night by Midjourney, which you may have heard of. It's an AI that helps you turn text into images. And really the prompt here was kind of, you know, in Pixar style animation, show me a candidate going on the job search. And what they've done here in the AI has created like a candidate who looks kind of a little bit perplexed, I guess, going up a mountain, which is interesting, with a massive stack of CDs. At least I assume they're CDs. So this was an interesting take from AI on what the candidate experience was. And it's really important. In fact, it's more important now than ever. And so really, we're now going to talk about why candidate experience matters. And the bottom line is that there are fewer good candidates available. We have seen huge supply shocks in the UK, like COVID and Brexit, but there have also been other supply shocks in other places around the world. Obviously, Brexit is a global phenomenon. It's kind of created a huge issue with supply of labour. And then we're currently at a place in the UK where we have 4% of unemployment, which is the lowest unemployment we've seen since 1974. Now, you know, that statistic needs to be dug into a little bit, but broadly, the message is that it's really challenging to hire great people. And I'm sure that all of you have seen multiple phases of the labour market. I mean, even in the time that I've been doing this, I've been pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, and now, and we've kind of seen it fluctuate multiple times where actually it was just all about quantity. We need as many candidates as possible, like coming out of COVID, for example. But now quality is the thing that all of our clients are talking about all the time. So it's really interesting, and it switches all the time. So that is the market that we're operating in. But if you zoom in a little bit to the candidates who are actually in this market, the people who are moving through this challenging labour market, they have also changed. So these candidates, and I'm kind of talking about most candidates, but I'm going to put an emphasis now on kind of Gen Z and X and Alpha. They are either digital natives or you know, are going to be people who are using technology in the next kind of 5 years of their life. And actually, they are used to using incredible consumer experiences, things like Netflix, Uber Eats, arranging a date on Hinge, ordering something from Amazon, playlists on Spotify. Everything is geared towards giving you the best possible experience, giving you the content that you need in the most timely fashion. You know, Netflix, you don't even have to wait for that, you know, you don't have to click the next episode of Bridgerton. It's just rolling straight in. You just don't even have to do anything. That's the level, that's the bar that consumers are used to. But when it comes to the candidate experience, it's subpar. It's not anywhere close to that, we find. So their expectations are really, really high, but also their social, functional, and emotional needs have changed completely. So we're now finding that 1 in 7 UK employees are neurodiverse in the UK. So 1 in 7 people have some form of neurodivergence. And if your site, for example, isn't marked up for web accessibility, or you don't have accessibility tooling, you're immediately going to be losing a large chunk of those people. So it's a huge statistic, 1 in 7. 92% of Gen Z expect authenticity from the brands they interact with, and they are frustrated when they don't find it. So they expect an authentic brand experience. I mean, the expression goes that Gen Z have kind of developed the most finely tuned bullshit filters, forgive the language, than any generation prior to them. And so you have to be really clear and on brand with your messaging, and you have to really reflect your employer value proposition. We're finding in our data that before we start working with a client, when we drop our analytics in, we see that about 60% of people are abandoning applications halfway. So attention spans are lower, and you combine that with long apply forms, and it's an absolute disaster. And then around 80% of experiences are currently on mobile. So from all the experiences that we host, and it's millions and millions of journeys, we see that around 80% of those are on mobile first. So they're mobile first, there's neurodivergence as a category, there's authenticity as a requirement, and there's simplicity and this sense of being time poor. So really challenging market, very different candidate, and that makes it a really challenging market to operate in. But there is also a huge ethical consideration of candidate experience. And I think Tim Berners-Lee puts it really well in saying that he wants a web that is open, works internationally, and it works as well as possible and is not nation-based. And often what we're finding, if you look at generally the consumer brands and compare their consumer experience with their candidate experience, it is very clear that consumer brands are investing much more in their consumer experience and not in their candidate experience, which to me seems short-sighted. And it reveals a kind of hard truth. You know, it is people are prioritizing profit over the experience of the people who could potentially come and work for them. So there is an ethical impact here to candidate experience, which is making sure that no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what device you have access to, no matter what your web accessibility profile is, you can access that candidate experience. So it's incredibly important that we think about the ethics as we go through this. And also the financial impact as well. I mean, a poor candidate experience can obviously hurt your ability to hire that candidate and convert them into a hire, but there is an implication here that actually if a candidate has a terrible experience, of course, they're much less likely to buy your product, and they're much less likely to tell their friends that they should come and work there. So really, there is a very clear line that can be drawn between a good candidate experience and the bottom line financial impact that can have. And really, we see that companies are just unable to keep up in this landscape. And what we see time and time again is three different profiles. Let's have Daisy, Amanda, and Bill on the left-hand side. They have three different web profiles. One is on mobile, one has ADHD, and one is applying from a different country. And as they move through this hiring funnel that we're looking at here, so these four key phases, what they're finding is a frustrating experience. So it's a generic job ad that's just full of text, and they've had to click through 17 different aggregators to get to it. They then get to the site and there's no accessibility tooling. So for the candidate who has ADHD, it's very difficult for them to use the site. We then move through to the application process and they're just faced with this 50-question form, and it's completely baffling. And they think, you know what, I'm on the bus, I'm on my phone, I'm not going to apply right now because it's going to take too long. And they've asked me for my CV on my phone as well, which is just like really difficult to do. So you probably lose them at this point. But if you haven't lost them, then often it's really difficult to get any updates. There's no structured feedback, and candidates are ghosted and left high and dry. And we see this happening all the time. So through that awareness, consideration, application, and post-application process, candidates are having a really poor experience. And the result of that is that your candidate sentiment is dropping. So the whole way through there, you start maybe at 80, 90%, and your candidate is maxing out at the bottom, and they have no more sentiment left to give. And actually, you're losing that candidate at that point. So the candidate experience is kind of multifaceted, but what we've looked at there is candidates are people first, right? They're potential colleagues, they're potential friends. So we should think of them as people. Candidate experience is how the candidate perceives the employer. We looked at some kind of macro and micro socioeconomic headwinds. So we now are all aware, and I think this was not news to most of you, it is tough out there. And then we've considered the kind of ethical and financial impacts of candidate experience, which are profound. And the bottom line is that we're finding that companies are finding it very difficult to keep up, and the tools and technologies that they have in place and provided by their existing systems are simply not fit for purpose. So we've now looked at candidate experience, and we're going to move into the next section, which is around artificial intelligence. I'm going to have a sip of water. It's thirsty work, this. So we're going to look at three things now. I'm going to give you a history of AI. I'm then going to try and simplify it down so we can look at kind of the nuts and bolts behind it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how AI can be used. So we find that in computing, we've been on these kind of 10 to 15-year computing innovation cycles. So basically, every 10 to 15 years, something big happens. This was the early Apple personal computer from 1975. You might recognize it. I actually think it still looks pretty cool. this was the first personal computer, and this is when suddenly computers were at a price where people could actually afford them, and get them into their own homes and start to use them for basic tasks. So personal computing happened. And then the web browser in 1990, I think Mosaic was the first web browser, was launched, which then kind of gave everyone an interface to the World Wide Web, which allowed people to search and browse and all the things that you're probably very familiar with in Chrome or Safari or Firefox. And then a while later, this happened. Mobile apps came along, and obviously the launch of the iPhone, but also of Android devices, meant that mobile apps and small pieces of software could be deployed on a device that you could hold in your hand. And you could do kind of gimmicky things at the beginning, like I think there was one where you could pretend to pour a beer, and there was kind of ping pong games and stuff like that. Now they do incredibly sophisticated things, far more sophisticated than that first personal computer could ever have dreamed of. So personal computers, web browsers, mobile apps, and now we have generative AI and large language models. I think the first version of ChatGPT was launched in 2020. And this really is the next big trend in computing. It is the next thing that kind of irrevocably, like kind of irreversibly gives this new meaning and definition to what it is to live in a technical age. And we just have to get to grips with it. We have to use AI because it is here and it's not going to go away. So the interesting thing is that it's not a new phenomenon. These huge kind of language-based trends and shifts have happened before. And often what happens is there is a huge kind of democratizing process. So the first writing, I guess, was kind of when written history began, right? That was the first time people wrote anything down. And that was this process where suddenly we could start recording things that human beings had done. Up until then, it was fireside conversations, right? It was storytelling. But writing gave us the means to record our own history. And then what happened is the Gutenberg printing press came around, and suddenly there was a world where books were available to most people, not just some people. It wasn't just monks or very religious people or very wealthy people who had access to literature. Actually, suddenly books were available to everyone. And there was this huge democratization of information and of language. And it was an incredibly profound moment for the human race. But of course, there were all sorts of implications that came with that, misinformation, there was bias, and all of the things that ironically are exactly the same issues that we are currently facing with AI and large language models. So there is a huge amount of parallel to be drawn between what is happening with AI and what happened with that previous kind of industrial revolution inside the printing press. Now, when we think about humans and AI, I think generally, and kind of, if I look at my family, if I look at my friends, if I look at the colleagues we have here, you can broadly put people into three categories. You're either a denier, an optimist, or you're scared, but you can also be a few of them at the same time. So I'm really optimistic. AI is going to make me more efficient. I believe that. I think it is making the work that we do at inploi much more efficient, and it's making the products that we build much better and the services we provide more effective. But I am afraid of it because it is incredibly powerful, and it changes so fast. Every 6 months, there's a huge new release, even quicker than that. So it's really difficult to get a firm grasp on what's happening with AI. So, there are deniers, there are optimists, and there are people who are perhaps a little afraid. And it's kind of fine to be in any of those buckets. But I think it's important, that we shine a light on how it actually works, because it's very easy to be afraid of things that aren't particularly clear and are quite opaque. But people have been afraid of technology for a very long time, and I thought this was quite an interesting parallel, which was that when the kind of mechanization came in and the Industrial Revolution kicked in, similar to when the printing press was happening, there is this idea that the word sabotage or a saboteur comes from the French word for clog or small wooden shoe. And what happened was that workers in the factories would be so afraid of being displaced and losing their jobs, they would stand outside and they would be throwing their wooden clogs over the walls so that they would land into the machines and break the machines. So the word that we now have for sabotage comes directly from essentially fear of replacement, fear of the Industrial Revolution. So this is not a new concept. This is just another phase in the human evolution, and one that we have seen before and one that we have weathered. And what happens is people adapt, they adjust, and they reskill. There are a few concepts that it's important to understand with AI, and I'm going to do my best now to do a really succinct explanation of AI, and I really hope that I do a good job with it. And if I don't, write to me and I'll have another go. Here goes. So there are three core concepts with AI. And fundamentally, I think it's important to say that AI is not actually a new thing. Machine learning has been deployed for a long time, for a few decades now, but it has been deployed at things like credit ratings, weather forecasting, bank transactions. So it's been happening already, okay? Generative AI came around, and essentially that was AI that could create new original content. So rather than just predicting patterns in data, it could actually create new content. Okay, so that's what generative AI is. It generates content. And then LLMs, large language models, all it is generative AI that can communicate using human language. So you type something in, it knows that it can type something back, and it's a human way to interact with a kind of a brain, basically. So AI has been around for some time. Generative AI creates new content, and LLMs is communicating with AI through human language. Now, if we dig into that last point, large language models, why are they called large? Because they have billions or sometimes trillions of parameters or data points. And all they are is numerical representations of information that we pass in. So birds are animals, right? Would potentially be stored as 1, 2, 3. Birds is 1, R is 2, animals is 3. 1, 2, 3 is a representation of birds are animals. Birds are humans might be stored as birds are 1, humans are 2. Sorry, birds are 1, R is 2, humans are 10. Now, if you wrote a prompt into a model that had been trained on the entire content of the internet, there would be far more occurrences of 1, 2, and 3 than 1, 2, and 10, because birds are not humans. So if you wrote a prompt into this large language model and said birds are, it would simply, by a process of reasoning, know that it's much more likely that a bird is an animal than a human. That is all a large language model is. It's obviously a very simple version of it, but it is that on a huge scale where data is represented as numbers, and the large language model simply predicts the likelihood of one word to follow another based on things that it has learned previously. And the learning point is an important one. How are they so smart? Well, they listen and they learn. And the reason that I've got another picture here of Nell, my daughter, is because Nell does not learn by me giving her a bunch of instructions and telling her to repeat stuff. She learns by listening. And literally 2 days ago, she hasn't spoken a word yet. She's 1 year old. We went downstairs and she pointed at a pigeon and went, "Hello, birds." First 2 words she's spoken, "Hello, birds." And it is not because I have told her every morning to say "hello, birds." That would be a bizarre way of parenting, but it is simply that she has heard me probably saying "hello, birds," and she picked it up. Large language models are exactly the same. They learn by listening. They learn by seeing what is coming through, by being trained either by the probability of stuff coming through. So more people are saying that birds are humans than they are saying, or birds are animals than birds are humans. And they can also be implemented with human training. So humans can then go in and they can actually say, this answer was correct, this answer was wrong, which is, if you use GPT, it's something that you will see all the time. You know, which answer was better. That is essentially human-aided training, but a large language model. So large language models, you can really think of them as a human brain, and they work in the same way, but they also are trained and adapt in a very similar way as well. This idea of models is something that you will hear a lot, and models are essentially different formats, different ways to interact with a large language model. So a large language model can do lots of things. So you might have a text to text model, right? So GPT, for example, you type something in, it gives you text back, text to text. Or if you use Midjourney, you type text in and it gives you an image back. But there are all sorts of models. You can have one image turned into another image. You can do images can be converted into text. You can have text turned into audio, and you can have text turned into video. So already, by understanding these models, I think it's, there are profound use cases throughout the candidate experience that could be implemented. And another expression you'll hear a lot is multimodal models. Now, bear with me, it's not that complicated. It's basically just a model that can take in lots of different types of content: text, voice, video, and you get text back. That's all it is. It's really, really straightforward. So essentially what this means is, and I'm going to give you a practical example here. So let's imagine that we're using this model to evaluate a candidate's interview process. Right, so they would do a written submission. You have the text. They would do a voice interview. You have the audio, and they do a video interview. You have 3 types of content. You put that in, and it can then give you back text. It can evaluate that candidate's interview based on all of the input that is coming in. It's that straightforward. Prompts and agents is another phrase you'll hear a lot. Prompts are really straightforward. It's how you will usually interact with AI. And it's stuff like, do this, here is the command, and it will return an output. So a simple use case would be, analyze this CV, tell me if they have the right skills to be a head chef, for example. It will then give you an output. An agent is different. An agent is asynchronous, and you give it an objective, and it will then go and achieve that objective, not immediately based on the prompt you put in. So your objective could be, here are 5 people, 1 is a candidate, 4 are recruiters. Go and schedule an interview between those 4 recruiters and that 1 candidate. Now, that agent cannot do that in one go because it relies on probably people to reply to WhatsApps and emails and all sorts of other inputs and outputs. So really the agent then has to coordinate between those 5 parties, sync up the meeting, schedule it. That's it. An agent is a task. It's someone who will go and complete a task for you. A prompt is a yes, no, more binary way of interacting with AI. So it is a lot. It is scary in many ways. And this perhaps doesn't help that fear that human intelligence is broadly kind of flat. Like the smartest person in the world is not going to get a huge amount smarter by reading loads of books. And instead, AI is on this huge growth curve, and it's becoming more and more impressive and intelligent. But that is just based on the parameters through which we define intelligence. And intelligence can be, yes, it can be IQ, it can be how many books you've read. But actually, my belief is that humanity is about EQ. It is about combining the knowledge that you've acquired with your experiences in the world, the relationships that you have, and using that to address a situation. That's where we get things like humor, where we get empathy, and all of those important things that make us crucially human. So that is not going away, and it is never going to be replaced. That is a fundamental part of what it is to be human. And so we should just look at artificial intelligence as another printing press, as another mechanization that gives us huge amounts of efficiency. And yes, it takes it to a whole new level, but really we should think about how we can use it rather than being afraid of it, because humans have got a whole load of stuff that AI will never have. And it's getting much more cost effective. So not even that long ago, AI was really, you'd have to have like an AI team, and you'd have to have, a huge amount of resource to build things with AI. That is not the case anymore. There is this huge reduction in kind of entry costs that has happened. So it means that anyone really can build something with AI. I mean, most people can use it themselves. You go online and you go to GPT and you can start using AI. But actually, the software that has been made available, the APIs, the software development kits, they are very, very accessible to anyone. So now it is an open field. It is not just the companies who have lots and lots of money who can build things with AI. It is pretty much any company can build something with AI, which is fantastic and is a kind of democratization we want to see happening in technology. But But what that means is that, we have to be really clear about the things that we do build and the use cases that we put in place. So I hope that over those last 10 minutes, I gave you a good sense of kind of where we've come from with technology and where AI has kind of have come out of, but crucially, how it actually works under the hood. And remember, it's kind of all about, data being stored as numbers and then predicting exactly what thing should come next. And really, you should just think of a human brain. That's kind of how it works. And then we looked a little bit at how we could use AI and the implications there as well. So we've looked at candidate experience and we've looked at artificial intelligence. And we're now going to move into the combination of the two. And this is where I'm going to show you some things. So I'm going to jump around a little bit at this point. We're going to look at the humanity and ethics. We're going to look at the current solutions in the market, and we'll look a little bit at the future solutions that we're looking at. So the first thing is, what should AI be doing? And I call these point solutions. These are really obvious applications for AI. And a point solution is a kind of technology that you drop in to solve one particular problem or task. And really, AI should be doing the things that are stopping us from doing the human things, right? So I've got here, human ingenuity is greater than manual tasks. 100% true. We have a huge amount of empathy and all the things that come with being human. We should be deploying that and spending our time on that and not on sifting through millions of rows of data or identifying patterns in the data, which is exactly what AI can do way better than any human ever will be able to. So I think that's where we should begin and looking at those simple use cases for AI. And if we go back to our candidate journey and that kind of experience we looked at, there are some things that we're looking at. So everything I'm about to show you is either already available or will become available through the inploi product stack. But the first thing is AI-generated job descriptions. So writing job descriptions is time-consuming. Summarizing job descriptions is even more time-consuming. That is exactly something that AI can do effectively. It can also spot, obviously, typos, but also things like unwanted biases, uninclusive language, things like that. So using AI to generate job descriptions is a really good use case, but I would always argue that there needs to be some human layer to make sure that you're protecting from any of the ways that AI could go wrong. So ultimately, the value add there is you're saving time thinking and writing job descriptions. And the candidate's value add is that they're getting short, engaging, optimized job descriptions that are designed for that particular profile. As we move through, we then move into things like discovery and AI bots. So how can AI help candidates access more information more quickly? So in this example here, you can have things like quick access to relevant content. And we have a bunch of different tools that we deploy, and I'll show you one now. This is our chatbot, Kim. Some of you already use it. Some of you, I hope will use it soon. If we come in here and you have FAQ chat, this is a very straightforward way to start to help candidates self-serve information. So if a candidate is on your career site and they have a question, rather than writing to queries@yourdomain.com, instead, they can say, okay, I want to know actually a little bit more about the benefits. And then the benefits are immediately revealed to that candidate. And there's obviously loads of different ways this works. We can either ingest all of the content from your career site and service that through the chatbot, or we can have pre-programmed logic and kind of tree logic. It can be very simple, it can be very complicated, but the bottom line is we want to give the candidate access to the information that they want without having to come to your support team or your recruiters. Another example is chatbot apply and screening. Now, Kin can also facilitate applying for jobs very, very easily. That's something that Kin does particularly well. It asks all the right questions and it syncs up with your ATS to get those questions out, and it can ask the questions in a human-friendly manner. But another really interesting use case for AI that we're looking at is this idea of deselection. And quality over quantity is something that we're all talking a lot about. But rather than telling a candidate that, no, you can't apply for this job, which generally results in a poor or negative sentiment in the experience, we should be using technology to help candidates deselect themselves, to understand that perhaps the job they're looking at is not the right job for them. And so something we're looking at deploying is similar to, I guess, a credit rating. So when you apply for a credit card, you initially fill out a form, and that tells you whether or not it's going to be worth your time going on and completing the rest of the form. If you have a terrible credit rating or you haven't got the right documentation, it will simply tell you that. And I think we should be looking at doing similar things with AI in the candidate experience. So in this example here, I spun a really quick example up of this for this demo. So it doesn't look pretty, but it illustrates my point. You know, if you come in here and you want to do like, let's evaluate, here we go. So come in here and we want to evaluate this president banking job at Interact BV. So this is a vice president of finance and banking. And we're going to come in here, we're going to drop that job description there. We're then going to come into this candidate, and this is their CV, who is a made-up candidate but has lots of barista and bartender experience, customer service, reservations, that sort of thing. So we'll grab that information as well and drop that in here. And now you can obviously weight things. We've all spoken a lot about skills-based hiring, and really skills-based hiring is just can the candidate do what the job is requiring them to do? Have they actually done it before, rather than are they saying they can do it? And I guess that's the simplest way of looking at skills-based hiring. So let's say skills are really important, experience is important, industries are important, education is important, certifications, maybe management level, yes. And then what happens is AI at this point, and this is, as I said, this is just a demonstration of one of the products that we've developed. It will immediately go away and extract an understanding of that candidate for this, or suitability for this role. So it's saying that actually they've got 20% score for skills, which is pretty low. And the reason for that, and the crucial point is, the reasoning is always made very, very clear. The reasoning is there is a lack of mention of skills such as data manipulation, regulatory knowledge, and risk assessment, which of course this candidate doesn't have those skills. Similarly, let's go down and you can see all sorts of other things like extracted reasons for management. However, skills such as inventory management, team management could be transferable in some contexts, but they don't seem to have the relevant level of management experience. So they have a 20% score. So this candidate would be served with something which is, it's unlikely that you are going to be approved for this job and you'll go through the process. Perhaps you should look at this job instead. So instead of blocking the experience, we're enabling the candidate to get to the right content. So there's another very straightforward application for AI in candidate experience. And of course, AI-powered communications. So something that we're working on is the ability to provide timely updates to any candidate, whether they exist in your current talent pools or elsewhere, based on campaigns that are either being run, opened, new jobs, that sort of thing. So these are all things that are either already available or will be very soon. And we'll follow up with more information on this afterwards. But something that we should think about is that our thinking is constrained by the parameters that we have. So right now, the way that we think about AI applications is inside the box thinking in many senses. It's like, what are humans currently doing that is inefficient? How can we make that more efficient? But we're also constrained by the systems that are already in place. So ATSs, HCMs, the systems that basically provide us with the APIs. And ultimately they say, if there's no API for that, there's no point in building a candidate solution for that. And we should be thinking outside that box. We should be thinking outside the box of what technology is currently available, what are currently humans doing, and actually start to think about, if that wasn't an object, what could AI do and how could it be applied to drive efficiency? And here are some ideas and things, again, that are on our roadmap in varying degrees of completion. So I think, again, we'll follow up that we would look at with AI in this case. So one is this notion of infinite labor. So if you have agents, and you can have millions of agents, technically you can have agents creating content, interactivity around a role. So you would have infinite recruiters everywhere, which means that you can open a role and focus on the important things, and you actually leave that first touch point recruitment to the AI. there's this notion of infinite localization or internationalization. So no matter where the candidate is, where the content is, it is relevant to that particular context. So rather than having to create multiple versions of pages in 5 different languages, it just adapts and updates based on the context. This is something that we're already working on. SEO is a real consideration. So in a world where everyone has millions of blog posts that are perfectly optimized, no one has any blog posts that are perfectly optimized. So SEO becomes meaningless in many ways. So how do we reinvent our concept of indexing, SEO, job boards, when rich media like voice and video, how do you index that? Those sorts of things we should be thinking about because they're coming around the corner. This idea of concierge or white glove experiences. So candidates, when they land on your career site, upload a CV and you show them the job that's perfect for them, they apply, that's it. Rather than them having to discover, trawl through jobs, save jobs, create job alerts. Actually, give me the job I want, I'm going to apply, that's it. And then the depth of content that comes from that, right? So you can create a campaign around every job, and this idea of rich job pages that is not just because they have nice glossy images, but rich job pages that are dynamic and populated with content based on context. When we move through to this application conversion phase, it's like this idea of companions that you may have heard of is really, really powerful. So cross-domain personal assistants who will be helping candidates apply for jobs. They will give the AI a brief. The AI will then go and apply for the job. And there is this kind of impending threat that candidates will be using these AIs, and they already are indeed, to apply for jobs all over the internet. So how do you then prevent those candidates perhaps from coming through and making sure that you are screening those automated applications out of the process? So there's kind of two sides to that coin. And then predictive agents who know what to do before you know that it's going to be a problem. Things like opening roles before they become an issue. Things like warming candidates up before the role is even open. And that gets us into a very interesting territory where things are predicted rather than kind of reactive. So I still believe that through this, hiring is a deeply human endeavor, and AI is a fantastic tool that allows us to do that more effectively. And if you haven't read Craig Fisher's book on hiring humans, I would recommend it. And it touches on a lot of these themes, and he writes really well on it. But the consideration here is that using AI to generate a job description is one thing, but allowing AI to make important decisions could negatively impact your candidate experience. So it's really important to think about how you use AI. Rather than using AI to screen candidates out, maybe use AI to help them deselect themselves. Those are essentially very similar things, but it's a very different way of deploying it, and the language is different. So things to think about there. And obviously at inploi, our belief, as I said at the beginning of this, is that the future of hiring is personal. So if that is something that chimes with you, we would love to talk to you. And I will briefly touch on these last few slides because it's important to say that there is no universal standard for good. We think that the most important thing you can do, and the easiest and lowest barrier to entry thing you can do around your candidate experience, is start to measure things. You don't know what you don't measure. So if you we have some few lines of code you can drop on your existing careers site. That allows you to start measuring your candidate experience. Where are people dropping off? Where are they coming from? What's working? What's not? That gives you quantitative insight. Qualitative insight comes from things like our chatbot. So rate your experience as a candidate net promoter score, 1 to 5. Really straightforward. These can be deployed in a few days. They're not things that take a lot of time at all. So get this in place and start measuring your experience. And then work with a partner who can help you through that process. At inploi, we're not shackled to any particular ATS. We're not shackled to any particular AI. We are agnostic. We work with the best solutions in the market. And really, we help our clients kind of navigate through what is quite a difficult and complicated landscape. And we do that through our platform, which we've spoken about. But it really has a few key tenets, which is talent attraction, careers hubs, the flows and chatbot element, our journeys and CRM, and then obviously our reporting analytics, which underpins everything that we do. So the bottom line is it works. We've powered millions and millions of experiences. And I think the results do speak for themselves. And I would always encourage anyone to speak to any of our clients about what it is that we do and the way that we work, which is really important. So I'm going to stop there because we are up to 52 minutes and I've been speaking for a long time. And I'm going to hand over to Nico, who I think will ask any questions. Nico.
Thank you to begin with. That was a lot and really interesting.
Right.
We do have a few questions, and they go pretty well with some of the things we've seen. For example,
I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually, just so I can see. Okay, go ahead.
We get so many irrelevant applications because it's so easy for people to apply nowadays. Indeed, one-click apply, for example. How can we handle this going into an age of even more powerful AI submitting even more applications?
Yeah. So when we spoke a little bit on automated applications in this presentation, and it is a real thing, it's going to happen more and more. So there are a number of things that you can put in place. Simple things like using correct firewalls. So something that we always deploy is something called Cloudflare, which means that we can prevent bots or non-human entities from applying for jobs. So that's one simple thing that you can put in place. The other things you can put in place are, asking the right questions in the process, making sure that actually your application isn't actually as simple and short as possible, but you're adding what could be called targeted friction. So making sure that you are screening people out by asking the right questions, making that application form long enough that people have to really want the job, but short enough that it's not going to deter them from applying. And there is a kind of biting point there that varies depending on the kind of role. So, high volume, low skill, whereas, low volume, high skill might have different thresholds for that. So there's lots of things that you can do, and we can discuss that offline.
Perfect. Here's another one. Chatbots are often so impersonal. They usually send me in circles and I can never get to a real person when I'm trying to. That's not really the candidate experience I want to deliver to our applicants or candidates. Is this the future that we're just heading into?
I think bad chatbots are impersonal. I think the chatbots even the word chatbot is something that was really defined by the first chatbots that were on the market, things like Intercom, the annoying little things that pop up when you land on a website to buy a new pair of shoes, that kind of chatbot. Those are the things that I think have frustrated people, and so have kind of created this vision that actually chatbots are just annoying, impersonal agents who just sit on the side of the screen. But actually, a really good chatbot, a really good conversational assistant, is personal at its core. It communicates with you on kind of a human level. It asks you the right questions. It understands, crucially, the context that you've come from. So it knows that you're on mobile. It knows that you are applying from a different country. It knows that you've already applied for these 5 jobs. And so uses that context to actually give you an experience that is much more relevant. Rather than asking you to upload your CV again, it already knows that you've uploaded your CV. Don't bother, I can do that for you. So the short answer is that has been the experience for most people, but that absolutely should not be the experience with well-executed technology.
Cool. I think we can sneak one more in.
Okay.
5 minutes we have left for. It says, automatically screening out candidates based on some predefined criteria makes me really uncomfortable. Understand that. Some people have good potential or transferable skills, but being through automated screening, we could kick them out in the process. It's also legally and ethically murky. I agree as well. Mm-hmm. How do we make sure that we're not automatically screening out good people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that, there is no one line answer to that, simply because, AI is sometimes opaque and mercurial and hallucinates. But the first answer is having really strong guardrails. So making sure that you're not relying on one layer of AI to evaluate a candidate, and having one AI that is also holding another AI to account on those things, like, for example, biases. So often good AIs actually have 3 or 4 agents who are all defined and trained to do one particular thing, and they will be essentially critiquing the work of the other agent who is screening the candidate, in the same way that you might have a panel of people who will be watching a particular situation and making sure that they are holding that situation to account. It's exactly the same thing. So it is a real concern. There are ethical concerns, but I think if AI is executed properly, you can have those layers of protection. You can have those barriers that make sure that candidates are not being screened out for the wrong reasons. And indeed, providing reasoning around everything that you do. Don't just send it in and wait for a score. Send something in and demand reasoning, demand that that reasoning is surfaced. And that way you can hold yourself and the technology to account.
Wow. AI upon AI upon AI. That's great. And it makes a lot of sense. We have 3 minutes left. I think good to give people a second before their 11 a.m. meetings.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much for to all the people here attending for your time. And if you have any follow-up questions or you want to get in touch, we're always available.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. It was great to talk to you all and hopefully speak to you soon. Bye.